We see an opportunity to do what's right, to change business as usual, to become business as it should be, where people don't just live and work, they thrive. To do that, Colliers is committing to elevate the way we do business, to elevate the built environment. We will minimize environmental impacts in our own operations and through the services we provide our clients. We will increase diversity and inclusion in Colliers and across our procurement practices to create an atmosphere welcoming of diverse ideas and perspectives. We will promote health and well-being in our operations and through our client services to help improve lives. Together, we will elevate the built environment and build better for our collective future. For ourselves, for our clients, for our communities, for the world.
The future of work is flexibility and choice, so you can work closer to home, closer to your clients, and closer to colleagues. Hybrid working gives you these choices. Welcome to IWG, the home of hybrid work. We have many different brands available across the world, suited to every type of worker. Here are our core brands. Regis. Regis has made it their mission to help businesses choose a way of working that's best for their people. Spaces. Spaces believe work is about people and ideas. Our spaces are inhabited by forward thinkers, innovators, and game changers who are confident in achieving their goals. HQ. HQ creates professional environments where real work gets done, practical places with all the essential business needs set up and ready to go. Signature. From the impact of a building to an office that's stylish and sophisticated, it's crucial for businesses to make the right impression. That's why Regis has hand-selected the world's most iconic buildings in the most exclusive locations and created its signature brand. Wherever, however, and whenever you want to work, IWG has a solution for you. Show up at any of our locations, we're ready to help. Have a great day at work, today. We look forward to welcoming you soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This is The Power of Two, Tech plus Workplace in a Hybrid Setup, an exclusive Lifespace webinar event brought to you by Colliers Philippines in partnership with IWG PLC, NTT Limited, PDP Architects, the European Chamber of Commerce, and ABS-CBN News Channel. Our host and moderator for today is currently the Associate Director of Colliers Philippines under the Office Services Tenant Representation Department, in which she leads her own team and heads the Client Engagement Division, overseeing various initiatives of their department. She is one of the few certified international property specialists in the world under the National Association Realtors in the USA. With over a decade working on various segments in the field of real estate and working with Fortune 500 companies, she has garnered various accolades and has spoken in other countries such as China, Singapore, and Taiwan to share her real estate expertise. Let's all welcome Patricia Cruz.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Patricia Cruz, your host and moderator for today's event. Before we get started, we would like to go over a few items, so you'll have a seamless experience in today's webinar. You will notice that you can't unmute your mic or turn on your video function. This might concern you when it comes to the open forum. If you have questions that you'd like us to address, simply type them in the chat function in your control panel, and I will read them aloud so our speakers and panelists can answer. We may not be able to answer all of your questions due to time constraints, so kindly indicate your full name when you send in your question so we can contact you after the event. 2 years into the COVID pandemic, and most of us have already accustomed ourselves to different innovative ways of workplace setup. One of the most sought after setup is the hybrid work model. Hybrid work model combines the mixture of in-office and remote work in an employee schedule. While it offers many advantages like increase in employees' health, safety, and productivity, it also poses a number of problems while executing it, such as communication gaps and risk of data security. In this webinar, we will talk about the hybrid work setup and how technology enabled its success and prevented challenges like data security breach. Now, since we are on the topic of hybrid, as you can notice, we are also conducting this event in a hybrid setup. We are currently at SPACES World Plaza while simultaneously broadcasting it live via Zoom webinar. Our first speaker for today is the Principal CEO of PDP Architects Design Plus Architecture Management Corporation, currently one of the prominent female architects in the Philippines and is one of the pioneers in the country for sustainable island development. A board trustee for the Urban Land Institute Philippines, where she heads the Women's Leadership Institute and Real Estate. She is also a board trustee for PropTech, the country representative in the Philippines for the American Institute of Architects, and a fellow of the United Architects of the Philippines. Selected by the UAP as the Philippine correspondent to the Union of International Architects Women in Architecture Committee, President of East Asian Regional Organization for Planning and Human Settlements for the Philippines, an organization of planners, and is a chair for a technical working group under the Professional Regulation Commission for Hospitality and Leisure Architecture. A certified green building professional, she espouses sustainability in all her projects, speaking both in local and international conferences, and is regularly featured on all media platforms. To talk to us today about digital transformation in the planning and design of new communities, and joining us via Zoom, please welcome Ms. Cathy Saldaña.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here, and how exciting it is that indeed we are now approaching the hybrid setting. Tech plus workplace. This is how we are continuing our design and planning roles as architects and master planners in all communities. We put the T and the W in our work as we proceed onward with digital transformation. We focus on the clients and developers. For every project, there always has to be different roles, from the quantity surveyors to the project managers, to the source of capital and finance, to the real estate management, in which I know that a lot of you are here part of in that industry, like in Colliers, to the architects and the planners here also present, and to the engineers with all the different roles, whether it be structural, mechanical, plumbing and sanitary, fire protection, electrical, electronics, and communications, we are all, together with the QS, part of this big circle of building and creating in this new world with tech and workplace. On the next slide, we are concerned about our supply chain, our logistics, our construction methods, the waste management, the property management aspect when it is handed over already to the end users, as well as the managers, and of course, the specialized consultants who will always be a part of any project. Moving forward, we are all about people designing places. After the pandemic, we have realized that we are approaching an age in history where, say, after the Spanish flu, the Roaring 20s happened, and industrialization moved forward and surged ahead towards modernity. We are as well pushing toward a new age where we are so conscious about health and wellness, not just where we live and work and play, but very specifically in all parts of our communities. It's all about people. And in doing so, we are, of course, very cognizant of the different sets of people for which we create, we plan, we build in both the tech and workplace industry. We consider gender, demographics, religion, economics, education, and ethnicity. All of these are part of who we are now whenever we plan communities. Technology is there for the people. And whenever we build, we also involve all kinds of roles, from the architects and planners to the contractors, the quantity surveyors, to the project managers. We are leading towards sustainability, digital transformation, and community building, whether it be residential, hospitality, industrial, corporate, commercial, or retail. All of this is all about creating a livable future. And yet, as you are using technology and transforming digitally, always remember the human scale. Future-proofing is all about ensuring that the building encompasses a really good lifespan that'll cater to generations. Health and wellness are so vital because the focus will be on people. It's not anymore about cars and just pure efficiency. It is all about people being better at work and in their living and playing spaces. And yet it is also about the environment and ecology and how we treat the earth. All of that related to the human scale. This is all about building better, understanding the circularity and the circular economy that is now not just a buzzword, but to become a standard whenever we build. Designing for people is also focusing on wellness. Next slide. And here in the Philippines, we take into consideration excellent green building frameworks. We also look at EDGE of the IMF and understand that all of these, when you put them together, LEED, of course, is still there. All of them are catering to the Philippines in coming up with ecologically responsive design standards for excellence. All of these are not simply documents we need to fulfill and to fill up. All of these are not just standards we need to follow, but all of these now are part of the new norm in building. And when you consider tech and workplace and you apply your green building framework, you consider management, use of land and ecology, energy efficiency and conservation. And on the next slides, you will also see how important water efficiency and conservation is, waste management, and green materials, not just in your interiors, but also in your exteriors. Moving forward, green building framework takes into consideration as well our transportation, the indoor environmental quality, the emissions, not just from and into the air, but also intrinsically from the building materials that we are using, especially indoors. We measure as well the green building electives from the Philippine Green Building Council and how important they are in creating a better world for all the communities that we are planning. The SDG 17, so vital towards what we are doing, is so important for us to consider every time we plan, whether it be a new township, a new building, a residential community, or even a single detached home for yourselves. All of these are so important for us to put together. We are interlinked, and 2030 is very close by, and that is the attainment of the SDG 17, 2030. We look at various ideas for smart design as we approach technology and workplace, and we see that we as architects and planners are now using all kinds of platforms, from building information modeling to new ways of delineating and designing, as well as visualizing the work. We are now into VR, virtual reality, and using artificial intelligence in designing, coming up with all sorts and ways of doing 3D models, looking at new renderings, combining all together, and later on, we shall be producing drawings through holograms and presenting a new job site, not just via Zoom, but through VR. And all of these are now part of tech, of how we are approaching design in the new workplace, and measuring as well sustainable parameters in a different way that is not just attainable, but also very realistic, quick, easy, and affordable. All of these are part of the whole design documentation process, and be ready for it because the ride has already started. Tech and workplace in design has begun. And every time we create and ideate, we remember Walt Disney's very essential phrase: Imagineering is the blending of creative imagination with technical know-how. And never has it been so relevant as now, where what we only used to imagine in virtual meetings is already happening. What we only used to think, oh, I will be ready for online purchases in the future with G-wallets and everything electronic, from an electronic purse to all my online activities, it's already there. And so we are now part of this new age where the pandemic simply jump-started us to technology and workplace. And all of these must be put forth in the new future cities that we should focus on, where the functions, the urban planning concept, as well as the focus on health and the respect for environment and safety must always be put in practice. I always like to use this SMART whenever we design, whether it be interiors of an office or a new township or a big community. It's always about sustainability, management, the architecture, the resiliency, and technology all put together. And from here on, this could already create a very wild mind map of all the possibilities that are good, and all the ideas and all the essentials put together with a good timeline and a good budget, and there will yield a good project. These are some of the excellent green building certifications. I would like to add EDGE here from IMF. And I know that we have in our midst excellent people as well who are guiding the Philippines towards EDGE. And so we use LEED, BERDE, BREEAM. There's also WELL, by the way. And we are so happy that it is now in the Philippines. There's Green Globes, Fitwell, and Green Star. The whole real estate management industry, where we all are a part of, is now focused on improved urban planning. Because, especially in our country, this is one of our largest and biggest concerns and technical problems everywhere. All of that pointing out to poor urban planning, from traffic, congestion, the inability to be able to provide basic services, or even the absence of technology in some areas, the lack of open spaces. All of these are brought about by poor urban planning. And this is something that we are all in this industry addressing. And our industry is huge. $373 billion GDP by the end of 2021. And all of it needs our global input, good governance, our focus on 110 million Filipinos, our foresight into 2030 SDG 17 goals, our projections, our post-pandemic thoughts, our worries for the future. All of these are handled by the real estate group. All of you here, we are all together in this. And I know that with tech and workplace, we can help create a better world and a better Philippines if we just put our efforts together. Next. I just would like to say thank you. Over here, you will see my slides for you to get in touch with me. And I would like to stay in touch with you through your questions. And let's work together and let's create a better world and a better Philippines. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing with us interesting information about the digital transformation in the planning and design communities. Moving on to our next speaker. He is the country manager and senior vice president for IWG PLC in ASEAN and South Korea. He first moved to the Philippines in 1992, where he worked for EAC, Coca-Cola, and Dole before joining IWG PLC in 2012. Having first-hand experience driving business in over 100 cities and municipalities in the country. Awarded as Asia CEO Expatriate Executive in 2014, he has been recognized several times for best performance regionally and globally within IWG PLC, and is regularly cited in various media outlets. A public speaker, advocate of several NGOs, and the current president of the European Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines. His presentation for today will be about the 15-minute city. Do join me in welcoming our next speaker, Mr. Lars Wittig.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. This is actually the first time in 2 years that I'm standing in front of a live audience. So for the first time, if my microphone, hey, it's good to be back. If my microphone doesn't work, don't yell, Lars, you are on mute, because it's not my fault. And while we are just starting off on a lighter mode, I'm a little bit colorful in my attire today. It's a little bit risky. It's election year. Colors means a lot. This is nothing to do with election. It's not a tribute to IKEA either, but of course in sympathy for the people in Ukraine today. Now, going on to my presentation, I will start with a quote from our founding CEO of IWG, Mr. Mark Dixon. Just when local cities and towns seem to be dying, COVID-19 may have come along and saved them. The realization of the 15-minute commute will be one of the most dramatic and long-lasting legacies of the pandemic. What were previously sleepy dormitory towns are set to become vibrant centers for work and community life. Very strong statement, but actually it will be quite well substantiated by what I will be covering. First of all, the max 15 minutes from home, that is, first of all, it is regardless where home is. It's not that it will be more or less than 15 minutes. It is regardless whether you live in a tier 2 city way outside Metro Manila or whether you live within Metro Manila. It is regardless where you live relative to your employer. Those will not be the deciding factors moving forward. Mixed 15-minute city, it generally assumes that we have a mixed-use development. Mixed-use development, that means that you can work, you can live, you can shop, you can play, basically within that radius of max 15 minutes from where you live. Now, we need to reinvent the idea of urban proximity, redefine it. We know it is better for people to work near to where they live and if they can go shopping nearby and have the leisure and services they need around them too, it allows them to have a more tranquil existence. That was by Professor Carlos Moreno, University of Paris, and it was also what I said just before. He probably said it before me. But again, that very much entails what the whole basis is for the 15-minute city. The future is flexible, and we can basically say that the hybrid working is something that the CEOs came to appreciate during COVID-15. Basically, you can say that whether people were working from home or from a local office outside the corporate head office, or even occasionally showing up at the corporate head office, the CEO, the bosses, they started to realize that they could actually address, interact, and rely on employees regardless whether they were at the office from 9 to 5. And that was basically what the employees wanted to begin with, even pre-COVID. This thing about working flexibly whenever, wherever, it was a little bit like a grassroots movement, revolution almost. Why would a millennial have to commute for maybe 1 hour in order to make it to the office before 9 o'clock, almost to like clock in, so that an old stuffy office manager, much like myself, I guess, would be able to spot them right outside the office, and then after 5 o'clock go all the way back again? What is it that they really reach by making that trip to work? Well, what does it bring them to? It enables them to sit in front of a computer and next to a telephone. Now try to explain that to a millennial or Generation Z, because it does not make sense to them, and actually it doesn't make sense, period, because they can sit anywhere next to a telephone and in front of a computer. That was the whole point. That was the employee's point of view. And then, of course, it's absolutely better for business. This means that every single company, by allowing hybrid working, basically can cut down on their permanent office footprint. This is great. It means that they cut down on not only fixed office space, capital investment, they actually cut down on long-term liabilities. It's much better for according to the CFO, so now it's greater for the employee. It's actually much better for the finances of the company. And by the way, when I said it was better for the employees, trust me, the HR managers, they love it too then. Why? Because now they can better attract and retain the talents if they are allowing hybrid working. And then, of course, it's better for the environment. First of all, the definition of this is we're going to have a much greater shared economy. Flexible workspace, before even the term shared economy became known and used, flexible workspace was already the same as the Uber model and all the other good stuff of shared economy that came decades after Mark Dixon launched Regis and IWG. And clearly, without the commute, it's much better for the environment too. The enemy is the commute, and when we are talking about the 15-minute city, well, if we can all move within 15 minutes max compared to how it was before, we're going to save a lot of time. How much? Here are some examples. London, 47 minutes. Berlin, 50 minutes. Dubai, 45 minutes. New York, 54 minutes. And by the way, I know a lot of these cities, some of them I even lived in. And it's much easier to commute in those cities than in Metro Manila. So if we had had Metro Manila on this one, we would probably have been well over 1 hour, probably closer to 2 hours. After all, we also try to get home afterwards, right? Probably saving up to 2 hours in Metro Manila is sort of like a quick assessment, and I see everybody nodding their heads, so I think we're all in agreement with that. So we see that there are the FTSE 250 companies that are going hybrid, and these are basically the 3 times the number of these companies are going for a hybrid office model compared to pre-pandemic, which basically means that there has been a huge learning lesson thanks to COVID. And therefore, what had been predicted to maybe become the case by year 2030 is happening now. Or said in other words, the future of work has literally arrived early. So the flexibility in the city, a work base closer to home is a long-term priority for workers who want to continue to the reduced commute. So here we see the 77% versus the 49 representing the benefits that they will be accomplishing. I just have to speed up a little bit in the interest of time, but big businesses embracing the 15-minute city and certainly the hybrid working aspect. There's been much coverage in the media about this, and we certainly feel it firsthand in IWG. After me will be presenting, it is a profile from NTT. NTT bought 300,000 memberships from us, or with us. Standard Chartered Bank bought 95,000 memberships with us. At any given time now, 83% of all Fortune 500 companies are our customers somewhere globally. So this is a trend that is expanding incredibly fast, and it was a trend that we also saw pre-COVID, but now the legacy is simply that we just underwent the largest flexible workspace experiment in history. Whether the companies wanted to test it or not, they were forced to. People had to work from home, and that basically resulted in the lessons that were learned at all levels. You had regular employees suddenly in Zoom meetings with the CEO because they were relevant stakeholders. These employees would maybe never have been invited into that corner office in order to have that conversation with the CEO, but it happened during COVID. And that CEO, he suddenly realized that, well, these people that there may be 1 or 2 or even 3 middle managers between him, separating him from them. But thanks to Zoom or other platforms, he was suddenly inside their living rooms, seeing their children running around from behind them, getting closer to them than he ever had been before, even though we were so apart physically. This is a fantastic revelation, obviously. I think the only losers here, that is the middle managers, and the real winners here, besides the employees, that's the suburbs, it is the provinces, because this is basically, now we can work and live wherever, and that means also for an HR manager in Metro Manila, you can now go out and scout for talents in any province, because with the 15-minute city, that employee, that talent does not have to move to Metro Manila in order to work for you. And I will end it with that. And then, of course, questions later, please. Thank you.
Thank you again, Lars. Couldn't agree with you that IWG is indeed the pioneer when it comes to sharing workspace, and now we can share a lot of things. Anyway, moving on to our last speaker for today. He is the Vice President of Asia Pacific Chief Information Officer of NTT Limited. In his role, he is responsible for driving and accelerating the digital transformation in Asia Pacific. He brings extensive experience in leading complex business transformation and corporate integration across the world. collaborating across NTT Global Digital Office with business functions to focus on driving new technology blueprint adoption, improving customer experience, and realizing business value. Prior to his current appointment, he was the APAC Chief Information Officer for COFCO International in Singapore for 5 years. His experience include senior executive roles with KPMG both in Europe and in Asia. Passionate about the value of building globally diverse and talented teams, he has defined and implemented the new NTT Information and Technology Operating Model in the region, with a focus on business outcomes, simplification, and user experience to deliver NTT Limited strategic goals. To share with us today his expert insights about NTT's journey to hybrid workplace, let us all welcome via Zoom as well, Mr. Pascal Weiss.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you're hearing me well and that you're all okay, in the current environment. I'm very pleased to be with you today, and I hope that, you will have an interesting session. So today, really, I would like to tell you my journey with NTT on how we digitally transform to a new hybrid workplace. And I hope that I will share with you some tips and hints, to make sure that during your journey, you can be successful. So let's start with the journey with NTT and how we transform, into a new hybrid workplace. So if you go to the next slide, please, there is 9 key challenges to move to a hybrid workplace. The first one is really to adapt to the changes. And, after a couple of years, working remotely, now there is a clear desire from our people really, to have this work-life balance. And if we want to attract and retain our people, we need to change. There is no questions, as Lars mentioned, this 9 to 5 on a daily basis in the office cannot sustain. So we need to provide a technology solution for our people so they can, have the flexibility to either stay from home or from anywhere using any device and accessing, and interacting with the company. 2, managing occupancy. So how do we make sure that now we are going back, from a more normal environment with, the COVID hopefully getting, fading away? How we monitor the crowd in the office, and how also we welcome our visitors, whether this is clients or partners, when they come into the office for any meeting. Third is the wellness of our people. How to make sure that, whether this is in the building, we have monitoring in place to control the air quality as an example, or also, to make sure that we have a clear understanding on the working environment in terms of well-being and wellness in the office. Fourth, we should not forget about the backend infrastructure, because these are the foundation of, enabling a proper technology to function. So the network as an example, how we make sure that all our cloud applications and video conferencing have enough bandwidth and capacity, to support all these resources. 5, making space work. So we need to shift, from a traditional open office with cubicles to a more collaborative space. And this is, what will hopefully help to incentivize and help our people to go back to the office, to be more exciting, to collaborate with our employees instead of, working in silo in a cubicle mode. Next one, the legacy technology. So we know that, over time, we inherit of a lot of legacy technologies that are old and not able to scale. So how we change this and to make sure that, we can move in a cloud environment, cloud and secure environments, so that we can scale our business. Employee productivity. This, moving to cloud and communication platform is helping us not only, to make our employee feeling better and hopefully increasing the productivity, but also to monitor and find ways to improve the performance of our people. Application performance. As we are moving to cloud, there is, clear, tools now in place that we can use to remotely monitor the performance of all our applications and, avoiding having people in the ground on premises looking at every single asset. And finally, how we address our security challenges from both a user and data point of view to have secured governed access into a single place. If we move to the next slide, so your journey, like mine, may look like this. So first, we had to react very fast, right? This, pandemic started, and immediately we have to adapt and make sure that our remote workers are productive in a very short span of time. The paradigm shift to an hybrid workplace model, this is also important because we had to, change and move this at a very fast pace to a more greenfield environment where we need to create and to build a complete new environment. How we enable the collaboration and the efficiency across, the different functions, our partners and customers. Having a cloud-first approach, which, is a very common theme today, but this is even more relevant for the hybrid workplace. How to reduce or get rid of the operational complexities that is happening because of our legacy environments and the lack of integration across our different devices and assets. And cybersecurity, now we know that this is clearly a broad topic, and how we address this, consistently, having the big picture in mind when it comes to technology enablement. Now, I would like to share, this is a feedback from many C-suites and, executives across, various markets and geographies. And this is very important to understand their point of view. And I'm sure that this will echo very well to the perspective today. A cloud-first, mobile-first approach to unified communications, which supports modern hybrid work requirements, choosing the best of breed platforms to deliver a first-class user experience across meetings, calling, events, and chat, with emphasis on collaboration, IT security, environmental and operational sustainability. This is, what defines today the hybrid workplace and how we need to move, into the new reality. Next slide. This is really the proposed approach of entity and how I execute this, within my company. So I hope it helps to give a framework to, define this, project and how we move to a clear workplace from the assessment, the design, and the execution. You can see that there are different objectives that we can see on the right side of it, which help us, to clearly keep in mind what are the main business outcomes and how we achieve them. As an example, how to ensure simplified and consistent experience when we have, meetings, whether this is in office, outside the office, or, at home. Another example, how we make sure that, we have a unified room system experience with the one click being the norm right now. So we need, regardless of the size of the meeting room, to have the same user experience with one click, having these key features in mind when it comes, to simplicity and make things user-friendly and workable for our team. Another example is how we ensure that we are monitoring and putting some action in place, when we have challenges, whether this is from the back-end systems, troubleshooting, or audio or video quality. We need to have this scenario in mind when we define and design the new hybrid workplace. Moving to the next slide, this is also some of the key building blocks that helps to define a technology solution into a new hybrid workplace. Starting with defining a unified communication as a service, which is the new platform on cloud that enables the technology to operate in this new hybrid environment. Then we need to decide what are the primary meeting platforms and secondary platforms that we want for our company. Based on this design, then you can start building your use case based on the size of your meetings or the size of your collaboration space. You have different, categories, being small, medium, or largest, and then you define your equipment and the right hardware partners that can help you during this journey. What is important here to remember is that we need to have integrated environments. And by integrated is that all these technologies, hardware and software need to communicate each other so that it reduces the complexity and streamline the operations and the support. Finally, I would like to give a few words on the concept of total mobility. Why this concept is really to make sure that we are working in a secure environment, having one connected identity, measuring and having monitoring in place on what really matters, being able to work anywhere on any device, and to standardize so that we have common technologies, common platform that we can remotely support from anywhere. The last slide I would like to share, conscious of time, is really the full landscape of what are the key considerations that we need to have in mind when it comes to hybrid workplace. So you can see that there is 11 components here, starting from what is our collaboration approach, which is really at the core of the new user experience and how we make the best of this new environment for our employees. Work anywhere on anything, bring your own device, being able to work on any countries, any office, and having a similar and consistent user experience. Knowledge hub, how we make sure that we share all this information on cloud in a secure environment. Smart workspace, focusing really on the collaboration space, less on the work cubicles, and reducing the number of meeting rooms. So we privilege really and focus on the collaboration mode. Internet of everything, having device as an examples. And this is just to give some example of the different partners in terms of unified communication as a service or meeting solutions, to give you some ideas of where we position the different competitors. We as entity have no preference, but this is coming from Gartner, and this gives some understanding on the current markets and how we position the leaders in this field. Thank you very much. I hope it was a useful sessions, and I'm happy to take any questions later on. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pascal, for that extensive and interesting presentation. So let me join Lars here in Spaces. So let me take my seat. All right. Okay. Meanwhile, joining us virtually will be architect Cathy Saldaña and Pascal Weiss from NTT Limited. Okay. So we all encourage everyone from the audience to ask some questions to our panel, but again, thank you, Lars, Pascal, and Cathy, for taking time to meet us despite your packed schedule. We are truly fortunate to be able to gather all three of you, who are all industry experts in your respective fields, to exchange thoughts and ideas relevant to our topic today. So without further ado, let's begin our panel discussion. We have gathered some questions from our audience from Zoom upon the registration. So let us start with you, Lars, since you are here. You'll be lucky number one. So this is from Arlita Narag from Chevron Holdings. The question is, what are the top 3 challenges for hybrid work in the Philippines? And what are the top 3 opportunities that you see?
I think we all know the challenges. It's the rooster, the dog, and it's a homing. Because when we work from home, that is really the backdrop. That we get disturbed a lot. And I can also put it differently. If we don't get disturbed a lot, we get lonely, because that means that we don't have the children and everybody else in the household running around us, and that's just against our nature. A huge challenge is the speed of the internet, or I should say lack of speed. and the reliability of the internet, and even electrical power. It's an election year. We know historically that means more brownouts. So there are a lot of challenges there. The opportunities, which are even more prominent here than in almost any other place in the world, is that the distances for us are much greater than anywhere else. And what do I mean by that? Well, the commuting time from A to B here is ridiculously long because we waste so much time in traffic. And when the traffic goes back to normal, it is almost, I noticed this morning, then we are back to losing so much time. So what we have to gain in terms of productivity by not wasting time between point A and B is tremendous. We used to talk about location, location, location. Now it's really more location, location, transportation.
Couldn't agree with you more. I always joke with other people is that it's faster to go to Hong Kong than going home at times because it will only take you an hour. Anyway, so this question is for Pascal. This is from Ms. Natividad Carino of Acumen Strategic Consulting. How do you envision training implementation in a hybrid setup where some participants are not yet comfortable to attend face-to-face?
So I think that's an interesting question because when you look at the last 2 years, it's becoming even more difficult to have a very direct and face-to-face discussions because people are not really getting familiar with it. So regardless of the technology, I think there is one important point that we need to learn again how to reconnect, as individuals, how to have, normal conversations. And for some people, it may be more difficult than others. So, and for me, what is important is how we can help the technology, how the technology can help, to make sure that we can reconnect with our people. Not only, by, hiding behind our laptops, but also, giving some, hints, tips to reconnect with our people. As an example, we need to ensure that we use the camera. Having the camera and, being able to look in the eyes of the individuals can, help to understand their feelings and open to discuss more on personal matters. So that is one example. Also, to give my own experience over the last 2 years, we helped to build some internal applications on the well-being and the wellness of our peoples, or how to react, on some of the COVID situation, dramatic situation in India, as an example, where we build solutions to connect with our people, so that they can have a hotline, so they can connect to our support, to have, quick help in case they need, to reconnect with the team.
All right, thank you, Pascal. Now for Cathy, but this can also be answered by Lars. This is from Annalisa Vinoya from Thom Services, Inc. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I want to know what is the new setup in the market now given the hybrid work scheme in the office?
Lars, may I answer that?
Cathy, I will give it a try first then.
Yes,
then I'm sure
please.
you will add valuable points afterwards. The biggest difference in the hybrid working scene right now is that all of these typical head offices, or usually with one major location, either in Ortigas, Makati, or BGC, they're downscaling. They're simply, when their office comes up for renewal, they might go from 10 to only 3 or 4 floors, conventional office space. Is that because there are fewer employees? No, not at all. It's just a matter of, the point is that their employees can occasionally come in to the head office, in quotation marks, or they can go to office hubs. So typically, these offices, as they downscale, they establish office hubs, maybe one in Alabang, one up in Quezon City, it could be Eastwood, Cubao, and then down in Old Manila, which means that there are some dedicated offices where the employees can go in and close the door, and it will be colleagues from their same company that they're seated together with. At the same time, they will also all have the memberships, which means that they can drop into any location of a certain network. In our case, with the largest network in the Philippines and the world, they can drop into any Regis or Spaces location near them.
How about you, Cathy?
Well, what we are seeing out of this that is happening, the hybrid work setting using tech and workplace in the hybrid setting, is that there is more work-life balance for most of our countrymen, especially in our situation here in Metro Manila, where clearly the commutes are so difficult. All of a sudden now you are afforded ways by which you can take care of your families, you can be healthier, you can be more productive. You do not have any excuse to be tardy, no excuse to be late in your meeting, because it's just a click of a button. And at the same time, what we are seeing here as well is the development and the progress that, even as Lars was mentioning, they have branches and offices all over. And when you put all of that together, we are seeing not just that distributed growth and development, but it's also great for the health and well-being of our people. You can look at your daughter who is studying in one of the rooms while you are working in your own office space in the house, and yet be able to manage and still stay efficient. And now it's all about ensuring that technology keeps us all connected.
For that, I don't know, sometimes I think it would depend as well where you're coming from, but I do agree that you have work-life balance, especially if you're fortunate, it would be easier to do work, but for some areas, sometimes technology is hard to be supported in the country right now. So anyway, this question is for Pascal. This is from Mr. Rene Alvin Oquendo, Ateneo de Iloilo. How can we optimize the hybrid work of educators through the help of technology? So?
Yes. So I think this question is really, in terms of how we can make sure that we make most of our tools. So it comes down really to making sure that, one, we maximize and we communicate and we educate to our people how to maximize the use of the technology. And this is starting with explaining with, use case scenarios on their day-to-day, activities, how they can make most of it. Within NTT, we had several campaigns, as an example, on Microsoft Office to explain to our people how they maximize their productivity tools, whether it comes to Office Suite, Teams, or using some monitoring or Power BI dashboard, how we can do this as a self-service to our people so they maximize the value of the technology. I think that's important that, we let our people use this as a self-service rather than, doing the support and building for them. I think we can see clearly now with, everybody using mobile as an example, that the mobility is really pretty much, extensively used also with our new generations of employees. And we need to ensure that, we can have these trainings, materials and documentation on mobile, on the go, so our people can really access from anywhere and leverage this technology, and using the mobility as an advantage for the company.
Add a comment to this. I think we just saw a perfect example of how people can participate or be part of an organization regardless where they are, because this question came from Iloilo. So we have a person participating in this event in Iloilo, and should there be one or two here who are not quite familiar with Iloilo, it is just over 1 hour's flight, Western Visayas. It's a city and a province on the island of Panay. So, I mean, this is an individual attending this event. It could also be that we were all in the same, working for the same corporation, and it was just yet another employee of our team who just coincidentally is in Iloilo, and it made absolutely no difference to his or her ability to participate with questions nor presentations. As we see, we even have presentations from Singapore, right?
Yeah, perfect example will be you, Pascal, because you are not in the Philippines. You are actually in Singapore right now.
That's right.
So anyway, we have another question again. This is from Riz Reyes from Business Mirror newspaper. What are the things that landlords should implement once workers are required to report to their respective offices? This probably could be answered by you, Lars, and Cathy.
Cathy, you ladies first.
Well, in terms of landlord requirements, things are changing right now, especially after the pandemic. So much focus has been on wellness and health, and I believe this will always stay. That's my quick response.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah. In the bigger picture, strategically, there's a complete shift right now for the landlords and the developers. Until the pandemic hit us, we were very focused on getting green, sustainable buildings. They were LEED accredited, which is very cumbersome. You can only get that accreditation by sending in the application to Washington, D.C. What was it all about? It was about the health of the building. Now it's 100% about the health of the tenants. And that basically also means that combining that with the hybrid working, which I think we are all in agreement, that's the future and that's what the numbers are telling us. That means that the landlord and the developer have to view their buildings in a totally different way. They have to start by looking at the needs, the behavior of the employees, of the companies that coincidentally also their tenants. So if they do not think in hybrid working, if they do not start to do product development and reinventing their buildings, they're going to face very, very tough years ahead. And can you imagine, landlords and developers for the longest, they're putting up thousands of tons of steel, glass, and concrete. And then that big, heavy asset is what it is for at least 75 years. And suddenly, the need just changes radically. How do you reinvent and do product development for an asset like that? Well, you have to go back to the nature of the demand, and that is really that human resource discussion that we're all supposed to be real estate people. But what we are discussing now, that's human resources. That is where the landlord's mindset quickly is changing to. Otherwise, just as quickly, they are out of business.
Yes. Just like to say something about what Cathy presented during her presentation. She did mention that the focus right now is the people. And right now, even though we are not HR personnel, we need to take into this account because at the end of the day, the biggest asset will be the people. So the last question that we received is for Pascal. What are some of the most important tech-related features? Example will be video conferencing, dedicated server rack space, internet connectivity, redundancy, that occupiers should consider in flexible workspaces in view of hybrid work?
Another good questions. So I think we need to break this down from a user experience point of view, from a backend experience, and a collaboration. So from a user experience, we need to be mobile first. So we need to build our applications with secure mobility features so that we can access from any device and anywhere. We know that smartphones are, really widely used, and there is no way we can ask our employees, to work on a desktop, in this new digital area. The second is on the collaboration and how we can make sure that this tool can be accessed from anywhere and using any device. But at the same time, this needs to be on a cloud collaboration platform so that we can ensure that this is centralized and secured. And then from an infrastructure and backend, the network with the right capacity, bandwidth, and quality of service is really important. So with the cloud transformations, we can have dedicated bandwidth with good latency, as an example, for real-time applications with audio, video conferencing, instant messaging, and streaming, right? So that's very important that we scale and size the backend network with proper resource. Also, shifts from a non-prem infrastructure to a consumptive subscription model based on cloud technology, so that you can upsize, downsize your environments based on your requirements and your budget. And lastly, the integration component, having integrated technology within our workspace with one-click user experience is really having the right partner, the right integrated partner for you, for your company, so that you don't have multitude of fancy technologies that cannot, integrate and communicate each other. So you need to have a consistent design and integrated technology solution.
All right. Thank you, Pascal. Okay, so just going back in terms of the landlord psychographic, do you think, Lars, IWG is a differentiator? Meaning to say, do you think having a workplace or a flexible workspace in their building or in their portfolio a must, or is it a leverage nowadays?
I think it is a must to the degree that if you omit some kind of flexible workspace solution within each and every building, that landlord, that developer might as well have forgotten to put in a reception or an elevator or parking. It is attractive for tenants to be in a building with flexible workspace, and it is not attractive to be in one that doesn't have it. You require that flexibility. The speed of change pre-COVID was already so rapid that it's basically impossible for any company to predict their workspace needs for the next 5 or 10 years. I mean, in 10 years, an entire industry can actually become obsolete. So in order for them to even take conventional office space in a building, they want to know that if need be, they're not going to run out of space, even if they hit the ceiling, so to speak, outgrow the space, that they can still expand into the buffer of flexible workspace, and on a rainy day also retract back to their traditional offices, just like some might actually only rely solely, entirely on the flexible workspace. Either way, now we are only talking about one location, right? But I spoke about the 15-minute city. We are talking about hybrid working. Of course, you want to have a flexible workspace solution in that one building that then at the same time, for all who avail of it, meaning all those who become members of the flexible part of the workspace in the building, that they then by default get the access to the other 3,500 location if it is with IWG. And as you know, we are by far the largest in the world. Nobody else have that kind of a network. And in the Philippines, it of course means we are nationwide. It's not just the biggest network in the Philippines, it's also nationwide.
All right. Thank you very much, Lars. Now this is for Pascal. How can we ensure and promote less tech exhaustion amidst a shift to a tech and hybrid workplace?
So it's all back to the key principle to move to cloud. If we leverage the cloud, in the new hybrid workplace solutions, solutions like software as a service, platform as a service, communication as a service, then there is less tech exhaustion and less effort required to maintain and to do remote operations that can be centralized. Look for subscription consumptive model and have digital endpoints device that you can centrally support. I think that's very important in terms of the platform that you choose, and being cloud will also help to achieve efficiency and security.
Thank you, Pascal. And then for Cathy, what are the adjustments that companies and their employees need to do should they shift to a hybrid workplace as their new normal, which we're currently seeing for most companies nowadays?
Well, it's actually very important for us to involve the planners and the designers, because quite a lot of it requires you to shift. So, and right now you are not just seeing this locally, you're also seeing this globally. Even Google and Meta, they have all decided to come up with hybrid arrangements. And in workplaces, you need to retrofit certain areas so that people can come in sections, in segments, in droves. It's going to be like a revolving place for people, like a revolving door of people at any given time. And yet also, whenever we work on communities, it's so important for us now. Like I'm working on several 23-story residential communities right now. We're looking for places where husbands or even wives can park and plug, so that if they really are having a hard time working in their homes, in their condo units, and they can go to this place right now. So a lot of that has to do with design and planning, and really speaking with the developers as to what spaces you could provide and be flexible. So let's prepare ourselves, because it appears to be the future.
All right, thank you, Cathy. I think we have a couple of questions from the Zoom chat, so we'll try to answer all of it right now. So we'll start with one question from Bea Lopez. This is for you, Lars. With regards to the 15-minute commute, since Metro Manila is in level 1 right now, how can we handle employees who does not want to work on site? Again, it's like an HR question, but by all means, Lars, take it away.
It absolutely is. And it's going to be interesting to see exactly what the effect will be in the Philippines, because we have seen it in many parts of the rest of the world. And you might all have heard about it. It already got a name. It's called the Great Resignation. People resign. They don't want to go back and work 9 to 5, 8 to 5 every single day from a traditional workplace. So it's going to be interesting to see how many are not going to accept it. But as we know, well over 80% of the employers do not intend to insist on everybody coming back to the regular work hours. So there will be a certain degree of flexibility that might hopefully satisfy most, if not all, of the majority of the employees. We do, though, have one challenge here in the Philippines within one particular industry, or accredited industry, PESA. PESA, to enjoy that tax benefit, it is location oriented. It was original. The history of PESA is they didn't even know what BPOs were when they created PESA. So it was assuming it is production, manufacturing. So these machines, they're never going to go anywhere or work from home, right? But now it has not changed. So as long as the government will insist on a certain high percentage of the BPO employees to go to work eventually, back at the office places, then we might see some good talents being lost by the employers in the BPO industry.
All right. Thank you, Lars. This again for you. I guess you are quite famous. So another question from Anthony Hoglino to Lars. That's what he said. Are you in the Philippines seeing a growth in interest from companies into having third space options closer to their employees' home?
The short answer is yes, absolutely. And if you talk to the landlords, if they are scratching their heads why their very big tenants, big international companies are downsizing, well, it's not because they're downsizing their business. They're just changing the whole configuration and to better accommodate their employees, productivity. I mean, this whole matrix where people occasionally want to get together with other stakeholders on certain projects, but not all the time in the same office in the same location. It is becoming a very dynamic process with distributed people, very project-oriented when and where you meet with others. And my own take, I talked earlier about the shared economy. My last presentation before the lockdown 2 years ago was about the shared economy. And the last question I got was, Lars, what do you think will be shared 10 years from now? I think jobs will be shared. I think we'll not be serving one master. And that will just play in even more into the hands of working hybridly, because we will be working on projects independently for many different companies, and every so often we will get into the same room physically with other stakeholders, but the dynamics are changed forever.
That's true. Cathy, Pascal, if you have anything to add, please do chime in, okay? Let me know. Okay, there's another question from Natividad Carino. One of the biggest challenges for Filipinos in a virtual workplace is the lack of socialization and challenge employee engagement. What are other ideas other than company town hall sessions and group breakouts?
Yes, excellent question. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, when we work from home, we tend to get disturbed a lot. And if we don't get disturbed, it's even worse, because then we are getting lonely. Now, we are social animals, especially here in the Philippines, right? We're very sociable. So there's also a drive towards co-working as in a community building. Everybody likes to belong to a community, not just be social, but to belong to a community. This space we are seated in now is such a community area, where we today have this event, tomorrow it could be an NGO presenting, the day after that an accountant about a new tax reform, whatever. It's Women's Day coming up. We have hosted many big women in business events and so on. The idea is that in order to satisfy your craving for the social, but also in order to learn from others, then we need to belong to the co-working. So again, this is actually just feeding into the flexible workspace, because flexible workspace is about co-working. It is about building communities. It started relatively early on because the young people who otherwise would like to work whenever, wherever they like, they do want to belong to a community. They do want the interaction. They might be very, very successful, but probably also even more successful than their experience justifies. So what we see happening is that they would like to interact with others who have also more experience. So they like to even find mentorship, our research have shown. So for them to interact with a person like me might be of interest to them. And trust me, because things are changing so rapidly, an elderly, more stuffy person like me can become obsolete in, I guarantee, less than 5 years if I don't keep reinventing myself by learning new stuff. I do not have the luxury of taking time off and go back to study. I need to learn from the Generation Z. I need to learn from the millennials. And a community co-working area like this is ground zero for me to stand in my suit, interacting with the young people in white t-shirts and blue jeans with big holes in them, because they have the latest knowledge from the universities. So I'm picking up a lot that way, and they seem to be enjoying to hear what my experience and learnings are, especially during COVID, because I'm one who have seen two or three crises before this might be their first.
True. How about for you, Cathy? I know the question is regarding virtual workplace, but are you seeing any new design for landlords or occupiers in terms of the architectural design realm?
Yes, we are seeing that there's more demand for some outdoor spaces. So if landlords could actually identify areas where people could socialize, where people could gather, could converge, and maybe a roof deck of a building or a balcony, it is working. And in most of the buildings that we are designing right now, that seems to be the wish list on top. And corollary to what was asked earlier, I would say that because we are a design firm, some of our people are so excited when we go out of town. And it becomes our way for gathering our community when we put them together for a trip to a site visit in Tagaytay or in Cavite or Batangas, Palawan or Davao or Bulacan or Bataan, just because it's one way for them to reconnect and then gather themselves. So it works best. And yeah, there is that need for human interaction. And as far as landlords are concerned, we are responding to that by creating more spaces that are more for points of convergence, whether indoors, but mostly for outdoors.
Okay. Thank you, Cathy. Work and play, right? So, by the way, belated Happy International Women's Day from yesterday. So this one is for Pascal. So this is from Eric De Los Reyes. Are there tools or technology you already use to measure productivity of employees considering working from home arrangements?
Yes, so there is different platform. Microsoft, as an example, got some productivity tools and dashboards, but it's not only about, you know, checking what our people are doing and micromanaging. I'm taking this more, how we're making most of our technologies, how we are using it the right way, so we can, you know, get back to our employees and provide trainings and more specific targeted materials. There is clearly, you know, some technology to monitor the performance of our employees. But what I've noticed and acknowledged from my end is that people are working much more at the moment than they used to do in the past, because they are much more committed. As Lars mentions, they don't have to commute, so they can directly, you know, sit in front of their laptop and start working. So from a productivity, we can see an increase of productivity, people working much more, but at the same time, we need to have tools in place to ensure that they are using the tools the right way and having, you know, a standard way of working. And that's what technology can help with.
All right. Thank you, Pascal. I think we have another question. Vina, are you ready to show me the question? All right. How about our guests here in Spaces? Do you have any questions for our panelists right now before we wrap up? We do have a couple of minutes left.
So I have one question for Lars. Hi, Lars. So you raised an interesting concept. Wait, do I stand here?
Where? Yeah, by all means, so that they can see we are live.
So yes, you raised a very exciting concept about the 15-minute commute and the 15-minute city. What I'm interested to know is what's your take on how can the Metro Manila achieve that reality? Or one or two things that would need to occur for that to happen?
What Metro Manila has to do is not entirely nothing, but almost. I mean, this has to do with the culture of working. It is the culture within each and every corporation, how you embrace this way of going to work, but not necessarily physically and certainly not on a fixed schedule. So this one is not particularly at all inviting for more investments into infrastructure. We do, I would love to see that, and it is being encouraged by all means. But that is also for other reasons. We don't need to see any changes in the city itself. It is the employers who have to say, we now embrace, we accept that the employees for 2 days work somewhere else and 1 day from home, whatever. That kind of flexibility. There are many different models, but it has nothing to do with what you want the city to do, I would say.
Thanks, Lars.
Thank you for that question. I think
one exception, though, would be the city hall. Everybody working for the public, the government employees, and so on. This was actually brought up even before COVID, that it was discussed that public servants should possibly work only 4 days a week at their traditional office location and then work from home 1 day. So that is what the city can do, full stop.
All right. Thank you, Lars, and thank you for that question. Another question from the Zoom chat box from Felicity. It is difficult to train people virtually due to poor internet connectivity, and sometimes we can't get there 100%. I think this regarding their focus. Any suggestion how we can make a virtual training effective?
Clearly, we need reliable internet, and that is also part of professional workspace. Professional workspace is not the traditional workplace if it is not working out from home. It can be anywhere, so that is why it is still within the 15-minute city. So wherever you work, I mean, the person who posted a question from Iloilo, I came back from Iloilo last week because we were looking at locations in Iloilo to set up a center there. So it is all about just having access to co-working at typically an IWG location where you know that you have state-of-the-art internet and, by the way, also security. One customer, I think I mentioned earlier, Standard Chartered Bank, 95,000 memberships. Now, a bank would normally never, ever allow anybody to work from home because of data security. It's very, very sensitive, delicate for them with confidential data to not be working from behind a firewall. So they cannot work from home, literally. But it does not mean that they are being forced back into the bank headquarters. They are just given the 95,000 named employees, the Standard Chartered Bank worldwide, who are being told just find a IWG location near you, and then you're good to go. So also for training, for bank employees, any others, you don't need to go back to the traditional venue in order to get good internet. We will make it available near you, and we typically do have it thanks to our nationwide and citywide network of locations.
Thank you, Lars. How about for you, Cathy and Pascal? How do you think we can help Felicity in terms of making their training more effective, even though they're doing it remotely? Do you have any suggestions?
Well, it really becomes a whole new exercise on creativity and interaction. So you are looking at ways by which not only do you send meals to people if they are all remotely located, but you also send them advanced reading materials. We have ways as well where we come up with fun activities and team building activities via Zoom. We even have hosted quite a lot of parties virtually. And we have also combined both hybrid setups. So the connectivity is always an issue. That's why having a place like Lars would be excellent. So it becomes an option now for you, Felicity, to come up with creative ways and new options to connect people, even if they are physically not beside each other.
What about you, Pascal, in terms of technology?
So yeah, I would add also maybe that, having collaboration space and collaboration tool where we can store and share data help also to make sure that we can have offline training. So we can use all these materials, whenever the employee wants to access to. So they can do, on their side, this self-training and self-assessment. What is important as well is to understand that, usually when we do a training, we take out maybe 10% of it. And that's really statistics, that's facts. So we need to understand, what is in for me as an employee, an individual, what I would like to make from these trainings, so we can target trainings for the audience. Because what matters also is to make sure that the employee can use and benefit from these trainings afterwards. So the identification of the training scope by employees or by function is very critical also to make sure that, we improve the productivity of the team. But right, collaboration space, teams, recordings that we can have as well are all different tools that I'm using on a daily basis, and they are quite effective.
All right. Thank you, Pascal. So I guess that's supposed to be quality over quantity as well, and what's in it for the employees. Another question from Cebu Home. A while ago, we got one from Iloilo. Now we got from Cebu. It's a fact that work from home isn't like Western countries who have bigger areas to work. So the question is, how do you deal with that, and what solution can you suggest? This can be answered by Lars, Pascal, or Cathy.
So when they mean bigger areas to work, like bigger homes?
Yes, in a way.
Yeah, I understand the question. I agree with the question, but not necessarily Western countries have more place, because it's very, very different. Let's take one perfect example, New York compared to Los Angeles. In New York, they were very eager to get back to the office place. Why? I mean, think about it. The only way they can get to work, that's the subway, so you would think that's the last thing that they want to do because of COVID, right? But their homes are so small that they were really eager to get back to the workplace. California, on the other hand, it's going to be very difficult to convince them to go back to the office, because in California, yeah, not only it's far, yes, and you're just parked on these 405, 605 highways, which are parking lots, but not only that, they're huge homes, beautiful homes, great climate, so they can sit out on the patio overlooking their swimming pool and whatever else, golf course, whatever. They don't feel the same urge to return to the workplace as they do in New York. So it's very different what works where.
True. It's quite relative, especially for different countries. How about for you, Cathy and Pascal? Anything to add with what Lars said?
Yes, I'd like to add that, if I may, Pascal. So I believe that with reference to that question, when you are in Metro Manila, indeed, you're talking about cramped spaces, most especially in the very center of the metropolis. But now here comes this wonderful opportunity really to get out of Metro Manila, develop and build satellite cities outside of it, and create those 15-minute cities that we are such big fans of from Carlos Moreno's philosophies, Lars. So when you look even just right outside on the fringes of the urban metropolis that we are all in, there are places like Bulacan, like outside of Cavite or within Cavite, Laguna, and it's great. And I'm so happy that Lars has even gone to Iloilo to look for spots. So that's where we should be going, not inward but outward. And then when you have no choice but to try to create spaces in cramped locations, then that's where creativity once again comes in. How you're able to create a flexible space that can work as both a workspace, a play space, a recreation space, and able to generate interiors such as using furniture that you could play around with, and backgrounds of artwork that could be used even for Zoom and virtual backgrounds. So all of these could come into play once we start expanding our minds and harnessing our imaginations if you are in the city. Otherwise, really, let's get out there and develop more out there, outside of the metropolis.
All right. How about you, Pascal?
From a technology standpoint, I think what we want to put, in front is to be able to work from anywhere and from any device, and on the go, being able, to connect with our people. I think that that's key. In terms of, challenge at home, I clearly understand. I have 2 kids as an example, and sometimes, they are using, Roblox or whatever, and, taking some of my bandwidth and network. So I understand the challenges here, but I think we need to be honest and have conversation with our people and our team. And I'm sure that they can understand also our internal and personal challenges. And that helps also to connect a bit more better with our people, to understand their situations, that we all, at some point struggle. And, by accepting and acknowledging this, help to make our people maybe, I will not say more productive, but more understanding, and help towards and be more committed for the company if we also acknowledge their challenges.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for all those insightful answers to that question. But if I also add, some companies, when the work from home did happen, they did provide various technologies such as noise canceling, mobility in terms of connectivity so that they can work from home. And a lot of global companies as well did get membership from IWG so that there's a hub and spoke model.
I think my wife would want one of those noise canceling.
If their HR is listening right now, they should get one.
Very important. That's very important also that we have standard laptops and, any device that can have, as an example, this noise cancelling or good videos. So the procurement of, the device is very important to get the best user experience.
Exactly, so that they can help the employees to be more productive wherever they are. I mean, family life depends on how they are at home. I mean, that will be dependent on them already. But this technology that can support them needs to be provided by the company. So there's another question from Cesar Tolentino. This is for you, Pascal. Will the total mobility landscape design concept require wireline broadband facilities, or can make mobile broadband be sufficient?
So now we are moving, to software-defined network. This is, becoming the new technology that we call SD-WAN. And this software-defined application is helping us to move towards, a new network technology that we can access within the internet. So that's very important. And to have, an internet, capabilities in office or at home that can help us, to manage this capacity and to use all these resources. On mobile, we can use the mobile as a backup, but it's very important that we have this internet technology infrastructure software defined and enable this, and scale this across the companies. And that's really the future of the network.
Let me just
Go ahead, Lars.
Quickly add a comment there. After the passing of the Public Service Act here earlier this year, it is now open for, telco is open for foreign companies to invest and own up to 100%. And that we already know that means that almost for certain Starlink will be coming in. Starlink is Elon Musk, these low orbiting satellites which will allow all to have internet access from the furthest corners of the Philippines. So these will be real game changers over the next very few years.
I can't wait for that one when the internet is way going to be better. Okay, so we have one last question before we wrap up. From Ben Alora. What are the top 3 practical improvements that you can add to an old office to improve its health and wellness? I think this is for you, Cathy.
Well, there's so many ideas. First of all, if you could check the utilities, particularly when you have all these old offices, you are looking at outdated mechanical engineering setups. So perhaps the air conditioning is a little requiring some retrofitting already. That can not just cause diseases, but they're also home for pests. So if you could work through the engineering, particularly mechanical and electrical, then work through the physical. Also the colors, the windows, the placements, and if you could have as well fresh air sources for ventilation, and look at the materials that you are using, particularly for the flooring. These are normally parts that you must change right away. And then the ceilings. So once you have all of these and you could strip them, having an industrial look would actually not be so bad. So start it that way.
Thank you, Cathy. Lars or Pascal, anything to add, or we're all good? All right, so let's wrap up this webinar with some parting words. We can start with Mr. Pascal Weiss.
Thanks. I really enjoy this discussion. So thank you all, and also for the questions. I think it brings me some flavor of the Philippine market and geography. So I really appreciate that perspective as well. Thanks for the other panel, Cathy, Lars, for your insight as well. I really enjoy the sessions. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me and I will be happy to have a separate conversation, whether this is technology or the broader spectrum of entity services. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pascal. Next is Ms. Cathy Saldaña.
Okay, some last words that I'd like to leave the audience with for this particular webinar until we see each other again in another Zoom gathering. Okay, so we have seen that technology can really work well in a hybrid setting with workplace. But now is an opportunity for us to expand and get out of the main metropolis. Now is an opportunity for us to grow. You developers, you real estate professionals, look at all the other cities now and strive to make them better and spread progress all over the country and all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you again, Cathy. Last but not the least, of course, Mr. Lars Wittig.
Thank you. Yeah, technology was really the first game changer in our industry that enabled us to work whenever and wherever. But did it happen? No, it didn't. Pre-COVID, we didn't even know the term hybrid working. This year, hybrid working has become part of the Oxford Dictionary. That is how fast it has happened. Everybody are aware of it. Everybody have been forced to test it. And because of this experiment, the vast majorities of companies actually have come to appreciate it and to a certain degree will embrace it moving forward also post-COVID. You can say, therefore, the future of work has absolutely arrived early.
Thank you for that, Lars. Once again, I would like to thank all of you for making this webinar interesting, worthwhile, and comprehensive by expertly answering the questions for audience and presenting the value of technology, workplace innovation, and design in a hybrid work setup as we try to cope with the after effects of COVID-19 pandemic. This will not only help us, the business entities, but also the general clients and industry partners who are looking to adapt these strategies and ideas when they go back to the office. I would also like to thank all of our viewers who tuned in for today's event titled The Power of Two, Tech plus Workplace in a Hybrid Setup, an exclusive Lifespace Webinar Series brought to you by Colliers Philippines in partnership with IWG PLC, NTT Limited, PDP Architects, European Chamber of Commerce, and ABS-CBN News Channel. We hope that you have gathered a lot of good insights and deeper understanding on hybrid work setup and how technology enabled its success and prevented challenges. If you missed some parts or want to rewatch the entire webinar, you can watch us again in the YouTube channel of Colliers Philippines, where we upload recordings of our events. If you have other questions, you are welcome to reach out to the organizing team. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation, and we would appreciate it if you would complete that and provide your feedback. You will also receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view the recording of today's webinar. On behalf of Colliers Philippines, IWG PLC, NTT Limited, PDP Architects, European Chamber of Commerce, and ABS-CBN News Channel, this has been your host and moderator, Patricia Cruz. Stay tuned and connected with us. We hope to see you at our next event. Thank you very much. Wishing all of you and your loved ones to be safe and healthy always. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.